He transformed me into a snake woman just to please his guests, even allowing our son to die a horrific death for another woman, and now, he finally regained his memory. But I had already been taken away by the person who truly saved me, and I had started a new life. Would I forgive the man who personally destroyed everything I had? Or would I let him be consumed by regret? I was infatuated with Marcus, the ruthless scion of a powerful elite family, even knowing he was cruel and possessive. Yet, I desperately sought to marry him, willingly undergoing genetic modification to become the star snake woman of his Viper arena. For 5 years, I fought one snake after another in a cage, solely to help him win competitions. Each victory was met with endless humiliation and torment from the guests. To vent their anger, they stuffed cigarette butts into my body, branded my skin with cigarette burns, repeatedly smashed my head against the ground, and forced me to lick their shoe soles. Every time this happened, Marcus would sit elegantly upstairs, coldly sneering at my miserable state. Only later did I learn that all this torture was tacitly approved by him. I had always thought that a man like Marcus would never fall in love with anyone. Until that day, as I was wrestling a python, with blood and flesh splattering, Holly, wearing a faded school uniform, burst into the Viper arena, her eyes wide. She stared at Marcus, saying righteously, "Stop. How can you treat people like this? Make them stop now." Marcus's expression surprisingly showed a hint of grievance. He raised a hand, ordering me to stop, then he swiftly moved in front of Holly. Shielding her from my splattered blood and flesh, he covered Holly's eyes and whispered, "Don't look, it's dirty." I stared blankly at his back, vaguely feeling as if I had found the wrong person. The next second, a sharp pain shot through my head. Marcus's bodyguard grabbed my hair, brutally dragging me back into the iron cage. The rough ground scraped my knees raw, and the taste of blood spread in my mouth. It was then I realized I had unconsciously stepped out of the cage, moving closer and closer to him. "What are you doing? You're hurting her." Holly pushed Marcus away and rushed forward, trying to intervene. Marcus said nothing, only giving the bodyguard a faint glance. The latter immediately released me, lowered his head, and retreated. Knowing he would be punished, I looked up, meeting his gaze. When his eyes looked at me, there was only the familiar disgust and contempt, but when they turned to Holly, they were soft, even holding a hint of cautious appeasement. Ah! A sudden scream pierced my ears. I whirled around, my heart almost stopping. It was Leo, my son. A venomous snake with a grotesque pattern was clamped tightly on his arm, its fangs deeply embedded in his flesh. Leo's face was deathly pale, but he dared not struggle, only stood trembling in place, tears silently streaming down. I frantically crashed against the cage, hoarse whimpers escaping my throat. Genetic modification had long ago robbed me of the ability to speak normally. I could only protest like a wild animal with my body. Marcus frowned, his disgust deepening. "Kneel," he said coldly. "Apologize to the snake." Leo numbly knelt before the snake, pressing his forehead heavily to the ground. "I'm sorry, I accidentally dirtied you." Holly's eyes widened, watching the scene in disbelief. Her steps involuntarily retreated, widening the distance between her and Marcus. Marcus's expression instantly darkened, a flicker of unease in his eyes. But I couldn't concern myself with that. The bars of the iron cage clanged loudly from my impact, my arms bloody and raw, viscous blood dripping from the rust. Don't do this." Holly's voice trembled, as if she was barely suppressing her fear. She tugged Marcus's sleeve. "I'm scared." This sentence was like a spell. Marcus abruptly raised his hand, stopping everything. "Get out," he said coldly to Leo. Then, turning to Holly, the corners of his eyes were slightly red, and his voice was almost inaudible. "I was wrong. Don't be afraid of me." Ultimately, at Holly's insistence, he let us go, but I knew this was merely the calm before the storm. That night, Marcus didn't have anyone release me from the cage. I was long accustomed to such treatment. It seemed he often forgot about me in the cage. When a snake died in the Viper arena due to high temperatures, Marcus, in a bad mood, would lock me in the cage and leave me in the heat. Many times my skin would crack, revealing the pink flesh underneath. He would just stand outside the cage, sneering, "You're so tough. Why wasn't it you who died?" When he lost a competition, he would drag me into a room and torture me all night as punishment. When I could barely stand, he would throw me back into the cage like a discarded rag, then leave without a backward glance. Once, Leo accidentally startled his snake, He then ordered his subordinates to threaten to rip out Leo's insides and feed them to the snakes. That day, covered in marks of abuse, I begged on my knees for forgiveness, but he just sneered, ordering them to shove the camera in my face. I skillfully took off my clothes, knelt before him facing the camera, and extended trembling fingers toward his belt. For years, whenever this happened, he would have someone hold a camera, that was only pointed at me because he said, "All snakes have privacy, and I'm just his plaything." I ignored his mockery, just knelt there listening, then crawled on all fours, trying to continue unfastening his belt. He kicked me away. I spat out a mouthful of blood and curled up on the ground, unable to move for a long time. That day, he finally lost interest and let Leo go. But he kept me locked in the cage for a whole month, not letting me out. I thought Holly had probably never seen Marcus like this. The next second, my suspicion was confirmed. When left, she patted his head like a child, telling him to be good. He actually nodded meekly, a sparkle in his eyes I had never seen before, but the moment Holly turned to leave, that sparkle immediately died, replaced by the familiar coldness. "It's all because of you." He turned to me, his voice low and dangerous. "You made her think I'm not good enough." That night, he ordered them to prick my fingertips with needles. The agonizing pain in my fingertips made me let out hoarse screams. Then they held my head underwater until my lungs almost exploded before pulling me up, repeating this again and again. Finally, he ordered me to be given no food or water for 3 days and 3 nights. "If distances herself from me because of this," he whispered in my ear before leaving, "it'll make you regret being alive." Watching his angry figure leave, I felt bewildered again, realizing I truly seemed to have found the wrong person. His meticulous protection of Holly was something I had never witnessed. That day, he brought Holly home, gently caressing her hair with his fingers, his eyes overflowing with tenderness. He ordered me, "Go buy condoms." I lowered my head, a hoarse grunt escaping my throat, and turned to leave, but suddenly pushed him away and slapped him across the face. "Shameless. Disgusting." She trembled with rage, her eyes red-rimmed. Marcus's head turned from the blow, but he only gently touched his face, then carefully cupped Holly's hand, asking softly, "Does your hand hurt?" Holly's tears fell. The next second, she grabbed the kitchen knife from the table, held it to her throat, her voice trembling, "If you dare touch me, I'll kill myself right here." Marcus's face instantly went pale. He frantically raised his hands, his voice unbelievably soft. "Holly, no, don't do this. I'm sorry. I won't touch you, okay?" Ultimately, the matter was dropped, but the moment Holly raised the knife, my pupils uncontrollably slit. Genetic modification made me instinctively react to threatening movements. The next second, Marcus's leather shoe brutally kicked my abdomen. I flew backward, hitting the wall and spitting out a mouthful of blood. Holly screamed, covering her mouth and taking a few steps back. Marcus immediately turned, soothing her softly. "I'm sorry. Did I scare you?" He gently patted her back, like comforting a startled animal. "Don't be afraid. She's just an animal, not worth being scared of." In front of Holly, he didn't lay another hand on me, but as soon as I left the room, his subordinates pressed me to the ground. They put a dog leash on me and dragged me into the yard. In the dead of winter, with temperatures dropping to 30 degrees below zero, I was chained to an iron post, my skin quickly turning purple with cold. Marcus stood at the doorway, coldly ordering his subordinates, "Holly is kind-hearted. Don't let her know." The cold wind cut my skin like knives, and my consciousness began to blur. I don't know how long it was before several dark figures approached me. They grinned menacingly, reaching out to tear open my clothes. I opened my mouth wide, wanting to scream, but could only manage hoarse, guttural sounds, until finally, I managed to squeeze out 2 words, "Help me." But the response was ice-cold water splashing down from the second floor. Marcus's voice was frigid. "Holly is asleep. If you wake her, you know the consequences." That night, I was thrown into the snow like a rag, my body frozen numb. But those men's hands were scorching like branding irons. By dawn, I was almost a corpse, but just then, news came. My son, Leo, was dead. They said Marcus, rushing to buy Holly a cake last night, forgot to take Leo out of the snake pit. Leo had been bitten to death by a venomous snake. I trembled all over, and I don't know where I found the strength, but I broke free from the iron chain and dragged my broken body towards the snake pit. But by the time I crawled there, only a handful of ashes remained. I desperately hugged the small urn. a beast-like wail escaping my throat. Marcus rushed over upon hearing the sound, frowning at me. "What are you doing acting crazy?" I looked up, blood tears sliding from my eyes, staring at him intently. He seemed amused by my appearance. "My apologies. I truly didn't expect someone to die just by locking a door, however." He leaned down, pinching my chin, his voice indifferent. "Allowing you to give birth to him and raise him for 5 years was an immense gift from me. Now, one could only say his time was up." As soon as he finished speaking, Leo's urn was snatched from my embrace. I lunged forward like a madwoman. Almost immediately, several bodyguards rushed up, pinning my shoulders down, their knees pressed against my spine, leaving me unable to move. Marcus stood nearby, coldly watching me struggle, a faint smile even playing on his lips. Something cold was stuffed into my mouth. I instinctively bit down, but froze the moment I chewed. Dry, coarse, like flour mixed dust, it clung to my tongue, with a strange, bitter taste. A burst of shrill laughter erupted around me. "Ha ha ha ha. She actually ate it." As expected of an animal, she even swallowed her own son's ashes. My mind exploded with a buzzing sound. All sounds around me turned into a sharp ringing. Leo's ashes. He made me eat them? I trembled all over, my nails digging deep into my palms, blood dripping from between my fingers. I finally broke down, frantically breaking free and lunging at the closest person, biting savagely into his throat. The next second, I was punched in the temple, my vision went black, and I crashed heavily to the ground. Seeing this, Marcus frowned at me, his eyes filled with extreme disgust. People who have undergone genetic modification really are like animals. I lay on the ground, blood tears mixing with foam at the corner of my mouth, my vision blurry. In a daze, I could no longer clearly see the face of the person in front of me. In my muddled state, I remembered the boy from 15 years ago. At that time, Marcus would get beaten all over trying to protect me from other children. Yet he would still smile and secretly slip half a steamed bun into my hand, saying, "Eat quickly. Don't starve." The day the human traffickers abducted me, he chased after them with a broken leg, dragging the trafficker off a cliff with him, buying me a sliver of hope. He once said, "If I can live a little longer, I will definitely marry you." So later, even if he forgot me, even if he became the high and mighty ruthless scion of a powerful elite family, I still desperately climbed back to his side. For this, I would sacrifice everything. My body, my dignity, even my genes. But the person in front of me made me question for the first time, can a person with amnesia really change so drastically? But I wasn't allowed to think for long. His subordinate rushed over, whispering, "Mr. Marcus, Holly is missing." Marcus's face instantly darkened, his gaze like a knife piercing me. "Was it you?" I desperately shook my head, only hoarse whimpers escaping my throat. He scoffed, grabbing my hair and dragging me outside. "Since you won't speak, let me teach you a lesson." I was taken to the Viper Arena's top-floor bungee platform, 300 meters high. The night wind howled, my legs turned to jelly, and fear almost suffocated me. I had severe acrophobia. Just standing at the edge made me tremble all over. Marcus, however, merely ordered his subordinate blandly, "Push her down." "No, no." I knelt on the ground, trembling as I licked his shoe, humbly begging him to let me go, but he just looked at me coldly. Let go. The first time I plummeted, my screams were heart-wrenching. The rope suddenly tautened, my body yanked back just as I was about to hit the ground. My internal organs felt violently squeezed, and the taste of blood rose in my throat. But before I could catch my breath, the second drop began. Dozens of times, I was pushed down dozens of times. Each time, I thought I would die, but each time, the rope would pull me back at the last moment. By the end, I could no longer scream, only hung in mid-air like a rag, my consciousness fading. Marcus finally had them pull me up. I lay limp on the ground, without the strength to even crawl. He squatted down, pinching my chin, forcing me to look at him. "Do you remember now? Where's Holly?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. His eyes chilled. He stood up and ordered the person next to him, "Throw her into the snake pit. This time, replace all the snakes with venomous ones." In the snake pit, over a dozen venomous snakes slowly slithered, flicking their tongues. The moment I was thrown in, a cobra bit my calf, injecting venom into my bloodstream. Agonizing pain instantly spread. Immediately after, countless venomous snakes swarmed me. I curled up in a corner, my consciousness gradually scattering. Was I going to die? Suddenly, The snake pit door was pushed open, and a slender figure walked in. It was Holly. She sprinkled a handful of white powder, and the venomous snakes scattered. She squatted in front of me, frowning deeply, her face full of worry. "Are you okay?" I trembled, reaching out to her for help. She gently helped me up, her heart aching, and pulled out her cell phone. Dialing a number. "Come in." The door opened again, and several men walked in. My body stiffened. They were the men who had assaulted me that day. Holly stood up, looking down at me, a compassionate smile on her face. She leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Fool." My eyes widened in horror. Holly's voice continued. She said, "After he lost his memory, I used drugs to control his memories. I made him believe that the girl who was with him in the orphanage was me, and that your family were the human traffickers who almost abducted the girl. That's why he hated you so much." She hadn't finished speaking when someone rushed in, interrupting her. "Miss, something's wrong. The young master accidentally fell and hit his head. He's at the hospital now." She glared impatiently at me. "I'll let you off this time." With that, she turned and left. I lay dying, staring at the sky, and finally burst into sobs. "Perhaps it was all a mistake from the beginning, Marcus. If there's a next life, I wish I had never met you." In a daze, the door opened again, and I was picked up. With a sigh from the newcomer, my world plunged into darkness. Marcus woke up in the hospital. He raised his hand to block the light, but froze the next second. In his mind, countless memory fragments surged like a tide. On the first day, he remembered the orphanage, the dark, damp corridor, the children's jeers, and the little girl who always huddled in the corner with those stubborn eyes. On the second day, the memories became clearer. The little girl's face gradually overlapped with the snake woman. Luna, that was my name. On the third day, he remembered everything he had done to me over the years. He had genetically modified me, turning me into something neither human nor ghost. He had locked me in a cage, forcing me to fight venomous snakes. He had indulged guests in humiliating me, branding my body with cigarette burns, and even, he had personally forced me to eat Leo's ashes. Pfft! Marcus suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, staining the pristine hospital sheet red. He remembered. He remembered everything. When pushed open the door and entered, Marcus was leaning against the headboard, his eyes gazing sinisterly out the window. As usual, she gently approached, reaching out to touch his forehead. "Marcus, are you okay? The doctor said you have a concussion and need rest." He turned his head, avoiding her touch, his voice as cold as ice. "Get out." Holly froze, then her eyes reddened with hurt. "What's wrong?" "It's Holly." Marcus stared at her, then suddenly smiled. "Holly, you should go back for now. I want to be alone." Holly paused, hesitated for a moment, then put her things down and left. After she left, Marcus immediately sent people to investigate. The answers confirmed his suspicions. He rushed back to the Viper Arena like a madman. But the empty ground where he had thrown me into the venomous snakes 3 days ago was now only a patch of dried blood. I was long gone. He trembled all over, ordering all cameras to be pulled up. On the screen, frames flashed by one. He saw those animals laughing as they tore my clothes. He saw in the last images Holly leading those men in, a malicious smile on her face. He saw blood spreading from beneath me, and I just stared at the sky with hollow eyes, my lips moving slightly. That mouth shape was calling his name. Cuss, bang! Marcus punched the camera screen, shattering it. Glass fragments cut his knuckles, bleeding profusely. He turned, his voice hoarse, like a demon crawling out of hell. "Find." Wen was dragged in. She was still struggling and screaming. "What are you doing? Let me go." Marcus sat in the shadows, slowly raising his head. "Why run?" he asked softly. "Don't you like playing games?" Holly's face was deathly pale, but she forced a cold laugh. "You remembered? Hey, too bad it's too late. Luna is dead." Marcus's pupils constricted. Holly laughed maniacally. "How did you treat her all these years? You forced her to eat her own son's ashes. You let her be bitten to death by snakes. Now you're acting all loving." She grew more agitated as she spoke, her voice shrill and piercing. "Now you care, after he's gone. Marcus, remember this. I only handed you the knife, but you are the true culprit who killed her." Before she finished speaking, Marcus abruptly gripped her neck, slamming her against the wall. Holly struggled frantically, her nails tearing at his arm, but he was motionless, his fingers tightening inch by inch. She painfully squeezed out words. yet a strange smile played on her lips. She will never forgive you. Snap, the crisp snap of her neck bone echoed. Holly's head lolled to one side. Her pupils dilated, yet that mocking smile still lingered on her lips. Marcus released his grip. Her body slid to the ground like a rag. He looked down at his hands, trembling all over as he sat on the ground. Holly's words from earlier echoed repeatedly in his mind. Finally, he kept slapping his own head. She will never forgive me. She will never forgive me. I woke up in a rustic cabin in the countryside. Sunlight streamed through the window, falling onto the rough wooden floor. The air was filled with a faint scent of herbs. The man who saved me had his back to me, pounding herbs. His name was Ethan, a traditional healer. Under his care, I recovered day by day. He brewed medicine and performed acupuncture daily, gradually clearing the residual genetic agents from my body. The toxins that had once warped me slowly dissipated under his treatment, and eventually my voice slowly became clear. It was he who gave me a new life. The day I fully recovered, I stood in the yard, the sunlight warm on my skin, as if I were truly alive for the first time. I turned and knelt before Ethan. He jumped in surprise, pulling me up. "What are you doing?" I looked up at him, my voice hoarse but firm. "To repay your kindness, I'll do anything." He paused, then smiled, his eyes curving into a gentle arc. "The needs a madam?" he asked softly. "Do you want the job?" My heart pounded fiercely. Sunlight fell on his eyelashes, reflecting tiny golden flecks. I heard myself say, "Yes." The next time I saw Marcus was a year later. At that moment, I was eating watermelon, taking bites as Ethan offered it to me. Sweet juice trickled down the corner of my lips. He smiled, wiping it away with his thumb, his gaze incredibly gentle. Suddenly, a furious roar came from a distance. "What are you doing?" My body stiffened. I turned to look. Marcus stood not far away, emaciated, his eyes bloodshot. Like a demon crawled out of hell. Before I could speak, he rushed forward, shoving Ethan aside, gripping my wrist tightly, his eyes bloodshot and voice trembling. "I knew you weren't dead. That's great. It's great that you're okay." He spoke to himself, but it made me instinctively tremble. Ethan scoffed, stepping forward. "What do you mean not dead? She died once. Do you know how painful genetic modification is? Do you know she had 27 types of snake venom in her body when I saved her? Severe vaginal tearing, countless wounds on her body. All of this is because of you. What right do you have to see her now?" Marcus looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, stumbling back to steps, his face pale, but the next second, he lunged at me again, grabbing me, his voice almost a plea. "I was wrong, Luna, I was wrong. I remember now. I remember everything. The promise from the orphanage, the vow from the cliff." He remembered it all, but what did that matter? I looked at him and suddenly felt ridiculous. Slap, a crisp slapping sound echoed. My hand stung. Marcus's face turned to the side, blood seeping from the corner of his lips. That slap was for myself. I trembling withdrew my hand, not wanting to say another word to him, and pulled Ethan, turning to leave, behind me. A dull thud sounded. Marcus spat out a mouthful of blood, overcome with rage, and collapsed to the ground. I didn't look back. Not even once. I thought Marcus would know when to quit after that day, disappearing completely from my life, but I was wrong. He acted like a madman, appearing before me again and again, haunting my every step. Sometimes at the local market, he would stand far away, his gaze fixed on me until Ethan coldly stepped in front of me. Sometimes at the clinic entrance, he would stand silently, holding some ridiculous items. "Luna, this is what I owe you," he whispered, his eyes almost pleading. I couldn't even be bothered to look, directly telling Ethan to throw the items out. Until that night, the moonlight was perfect. Ethan and I were enjoying the moon in the courtyard. The night breeze was cool. He wrapped his arm around my shoulder, leaned down to kiss me, his lips gently caressing the corner of my mouth. I closed my eyes, savoring this hard-won peace. Bang! The courtyard gate was violently kicked open. Marcus stood there, his eyes bloodshot, staring intently at our intertwined figures. The next second, he lunged forward, punching Ethan in the face. "What are you doing to my wife?" Ethan stumbled back to steps, raising a hand to wipe the blood from his mouth, but smiled reassuringly at me, signaling that he was fine. But I was utterly enraged. I stood in front of Ethan, looking coldly at Marcus, my body tense. Marcus's eyes instantly showed hurt, like a discarded puppy, his voice trembling. "Luna, You're protecting him. What else? I scoffed, raising my hand and delivering another slap. Slap! This slap was harder than the last. His face turned to the side, the red imprint clearly visible. Get out. My voice held a frustration I hadn't even noticed, but he seemed to feel no pain, grabbing my hand and shaking it, almost pleading, wife, come home with me, okay? I was wrong. I really know I was wrong, wife. This unfamiliar address made my stomach churn, a wave of nausea rising to my throat. I violently pulled my hand away, my voice filled with disgust. You disgust me now. Just seeing you makes me sick. Don't disturb my life, the life I owed you. I've already repaid. And I stared into his eyes, saying each word clearly. I'm already married. His expression instantly shattered, as if he'd been stabbed, stumbling back to steps, shaking his head in disbelief. No, impossible. The next second, he actually thudded onto his knees. Luna, please. He tremblingly took out his cell phone, handing it to me, his voice filled with a sickly attempt to appease. Look, I already killed Holly for you. I avenged you. Give me another chance. Don't leave me. In the photo, Holly's neck was twisted to the side, her head hanging limply. I stared at the photo, feeling a chill creep up from my feet. He was insane, completely and utterly insane. Before I could speak, Ethan had already picked up the broom from the corner of the wall and started hitting Marcus over the head. Try showing my wife any more of that disgusting stuff? Ethan, usually so gentle, now spoke with a cold, sharp voice, showing no mercy. Get away from here. Who allowed you in our house? Marcus stumbled back from the blows, looking disheveled, but still stared at me with unyielding desperation, his voice breaking. Luna, get out. I turned and went inside, slamming the door shut. That night, Marcus banged his head on the ground all night outside the door. The dull thudding sounds were like death knells. Exceptionally clear in the quiet night, Ethan sat by the bed, gently holding my hand. Aren't you going to check on him? I scoffed. What's there to see in a dead man? Ethan paused, then smiled, leaning down to kiss my fingertips. Go to sleep, we have a charity clinic in town tomorrow. I nodded, leaning into his embrace and closing my eyes. Outside the door, Marcus's forehead was already raw and bloody from the repeated impact, but he kept hitting his head, as if that could atone for his sins. Luna, I was wrong. Look at me, please. His voice grew weaker and weaker, finally dissolving into unconscious murmurs, and I slept soundly that night. The next morning, when I opened the door, Marcus was gone. Only dried bloodstains on the steps proved his presence last night. Ethan frowned slightly, then knelt to wash them clean with water. He looked up at me and smiled. Let's go, the weather's good today. I nodded, walking alongside him towards the town. The sun was bright, birds sang, and the breeze carried the scent of fresh grass. My new life had truly begun. Chapter 8. The day the news of Marcus's death arrived. Ethan and I were eating. Spring sunlight streamed through the window onto the table. Ethan picked up a piece of fish and placed it in my bowl, saying gently, "Eat more, you've gotten thinner recently." I lowered my head and took a bite. The fish was tender, the broth rich. Just then, a knock came at the courtyard gate. Ethan went to open it. Standing outside were two police officers in uniform, their expression serious. "Excuse me, are you Ms. Luna?" I put down my chopsticks and nodded. The officers exchanged glances, and one of them spoke. "Marcus is dead." My chopsticks didn't stop. I picked up another piece of green vegetable and slowly brought it to my mouth. "He was bitten to death by snakes," the police officer continued, his gaze scrutinizing me. "Security footage shows he released all the snakes himself, locked the room, sent everyone away, and then he jumped into the snake pit." My chopsticks paused for a moment, but then I resumed eating. Ethan stood beside me, frowning slightly, but said nothing. The officer took a photo from his folder and handed it to me. "This is a scene photo." I didn't look. He was torn apart by snakes, piece by piece. Screams came from the room, but the camera footage shows he didn't struggle. The police officer's voice was calm, as if reading a report. "We found a note on him after his death." He took a yellowed note from his folder and placed it on the table. There were only 5 words on it. "A gift for Luna." My chopsticks finally stopped. Ethan walked over and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. The officer stared into my eyes. "Ms. Luna, do you have anything to say?" I looked up, out the window. The sky was azure, the sun bright. "No," I said calmly. "I don't owe him anything anymore. The officer asked a few more questions, but I remained indifferent, as if they were speaking of a stranger's death. Finally, they left. Ethan closed the door, walked back to the table, and gently took my hand. "Are you okay?" I squeezed his hand back and smiled. "I'm fine." That night, I had a dream. In the dream, I returned to the hill behind the orphanage. Young stood at the edge of the cliff, extending a hand to me, his smile bright. "Luna, jump, I'll catch you." I stood on the cliff, the wind fluttering my skirt. I didn't jump, and he didn't catch me. The next morning, Ethan and I went to the charity clinic in town. On the way, the sun was bright, and birds sang amongst fragrant flowers. I looked up at the sky and softly said, "Marcus, goodbye forever." Ethan squeezed my hand, the warm palm providing a reassuring comfort. This time, I was finally truly free.